Actually, the reason I'm here, this is the first question I get asked is, well why are you here? And I actually, the reason I'm here is sitting over at this table here. It's her fault. Kay Stowell, right here. Kay sent me a text on November the 3rd with a picture of a car that she and her husband Al purchased this hotel in San Saba. And she knew that I knew a little bit about old cars and asked me what it was. I said, that's a 1924 Model T Ford touring car. And she said, great, can you come help Al? He doesn't know what it is and how to make it work. And so I ended up over working on the car. We actually got it running in a couple hours, and on the way back, I had actually been for about the last year looking for a location to put my Model Ts. I have a number of them, and I wanted to kind of show them where somebody actually appreciated them other than in my garage. And so I was driving around the square in Lampasas, and I looked over down the street and I saw the railroad depot. And I go, oh my gosh. And I'm driving over to the depot, and as I drive by the old bus station, I look through the weeds, and here is the hotel sitting over there literally in weeds. And I could see through the windows the iconic Texas porch of the original stage stops in Texas. And it was like, I literally did not stop the car. I called my real estate guy and said, okay, here's the deal. Find out about the depot and tell me what this is over here. And come to find out, the depot actually belonged to a friend of mine, Rick Harden, who I've known for 30 some odd years out of Austin. And so we hadn't actually connected in a while, but we followed since then, and then we found out about the hotel, and I purchased it in December. So hopefully here in the next few minutes, I have no idea how long this is going to take, and plus I want everybody to ask and plenty of questions when we get finished. There are so many stories, one of which is I actually just found out here. Dorinda filled me in on this one here. This porch that you see right here, well, it got taken off by a 1954 Rambler that was leaving the post office, and happened to be her sister that did it. So after the porch was taken off, they put an awning over there, and one of the Facebook posts that I got from somebody was, well, they were standing on the street when a truck came by and ripped the awning off. So I have a feeling that maybe there's not really supposed to be something there. But this is the oldest picture we actually have of the building. This is from 1947, and there's actually nothing on here that says 47. But what's interesting about it is that you see the word Texas down here? All right, there is, and up here on top, that TR, that stands for truck, and there was only 1 year in the state of Texas when the word Texas appeared on the bottom of a license plate on a truck, and that was 1947. And that's how we know that's the year of this picture. We have so little documentation on this property, and very, very few pictures of the back of it. So I'm going to sit down over here and kind of go through the photos, and maybe we can get them to kill the lights back there so you can see a little bit better, and kind of fill you in on the past, the present, and the future. And again, feel free to ask any questions as we go through, or at the end, I'll be more than happy to discuss any questions you have. Okay, the first thing that I found out about this was that the historical mark on the front of the building says the building was built in 1870, and that's actually not true. And the Historical Commission, I had a little chat about this a couple of weeks ago. Right here, this is the Lampasas Chronicle. That's October 1st, 1859, and you can see down here at the Star Hotel, Mr. Gracie is ordering all kinds eggs, butter, and vegetables for which the highest market price would be paid at the Star Hotel. Now, we also know from Mr. Gracie's son, and a post that he made in 1907, was that the property that the hotel was on was purchased in 1855. So clearly the hotel was there prior to 1870. Another old shot here. I thought this was kind of fun because on the right-hand side of the hotel, if you've driven by, you've seen the old filling station that was there. It was a Humble station, it was a Gulf station, it was a Texaco station. It was Cecil's barber shop. A lot of you all probably remember. And Cecil's family actually still owns it. We're actually trying to locate somebody that can tell us if it's for sale or if they would sell it. I'll mention a little bit about that in the future. And down at the far end, what used to be the parking lot for the savings and loan and is now grassy area, or it's got trees, and that's a Sinclair station down there in the corner. And so that's very few people remember there was anything on that corner other than being a parking lot for the S&L. So this kind of details how this was constructed. The center part was built in 1856. Now, we don't have the exact date on that, but that's the date that we believe based on newspaper articles and based on when the property was acquired. The fact that in 1856, Mr. Gracie was one of the names that applied for the creation of Lampasas County. And at that point, he would have been established. He sold his ranch outside of Lampasas to acquire this property. So that would be the center section, which was the stage stop for the Austin stage. To the right here is 1931, and to the left is, well, it's not on my picture there, but it's 1870. So the 1870 wing is from this line right here, that red line, all the way to that side. And so that's where the 1870 date came from. That center section right there, 1929, as of today, that doesn't exist anymore. And the reason is because that was actually two separate buildings. And I'll show you this on the 1885 Sanborn map. And there's a staircase there that connects the two. So the staircase was original to the 1856 part, and then they added the 1870 wing onto it, and it butts up to it. But I'll show you some cool shots there. Now, in order for the architect and the builder on the property was Mr. Charlie Green, and in order to convince Mr. Gracie he was qualified to build the hotel, he said, all right, well, I'll carve something out of stone and I'll show you. This is a single piece of limestone, and he carved a trough there that is still in the back, probably because nobody can lift it. Now, most people think this is actually a horse trough, and it's not. This actually was a cooling trough for dairy products. Back in the day, you didn't have refrigerators, and so what they would do is they would put these in these troughs. They would take a muslin cloth, they would get it wet, and they would hang it over the top, and the evaporation of the water out of there would chill the stone, and that's what would keep your dairy products fresh. It has multiple layers in there, so if you come by the hotel, you can look in there and you can see how that's done. Anyway, after carving that, Mr. Gracie decided that he was qualified to build a hotel, and that's when he was contracted to build the 1870 wing. I've got a series of old photos here. I don't have the back of the photos with me, so I don't have the names of everybody involved here. But I believe that this is Mr. Shelton, and I've got a better photo. But this is in the back of the property. This is the iconic Texas porch that you see there. And on the left-hand side, that's the wing of the 1856 section. Now, one thing you'll see on the property periodically is bathrooms that were added in the 1920s. Prior to that, if you need to go to the bathroom, you get to go to one of the 6 outhouses that were along the eastern fence line there. Once water came into the city, though, they then added some sinks, they added bathrooms, and in doing so, they actually did some architectural changes to the building, that some of which we're going to undo, and I'll explain why when we get there. But anyway, so this is Mr. Shelton. He was the night manager at the hotel. And while he was night manager at the hotel, he fell in love with a lovely lady that worked in the kitchen. And and he ended up marrying her. Her name was Ruby. And so if you know Gary Shelton, this are his parents. And this was a picture from the 30s when they got married. A few other shots here, and again, a lot of what we're looking at in these photos, they may be family photos. I invite everybody, if you have photos in your scrapbooks to show the hotel, please share them, because this is how we're able to document how this building basically evolved over time, because we have so few things to work off of here. Now, what they're standing on right here with this little vent is this used to be the cistern. So in 1870, when they added the wing on, they built a cistern here in the corner that took all the water off the roof of the 1856 and 1870. And at one point, there was a trough there, and again, they would have their dairy products sitting in this trough that had the water there. 1929, after Mr. Key had purchased the property, he decided it would be nice to have steam heat in the building. You've seen the sign that says steam heat. So he drained the cistern, and he put a boiler down there, and then put radiators in all the rooms. Now, some of you all are probably old enough to remember the radiators probably in your schoolhouse. So those were in all the rooms. When I got the building, all that stuff had been taken out. So I'm not going to put the boiler back in, but I may put some wine down there. So anyway, again, you can see this iconic porch up here. You can kind of see a little bit of the stonework behind. Just absolutely a beautiful, beautiful porch. And we'll tell you what happened to that a little bit later. This is inside of the reception area. The fireplace is still there. This is somewhere around the 60s, 70s, maybe. I don't think I have a date exactly on this. So when you walk in the front door of the building, if you look to the right, then that's the view you're going to see. So those two big doorway areas right there opened up in 1931. That's when you walked into the 1931 wing. Now, one of the things that's happened, this, by the way, this is Knight and West. He actually owned the building for a period of time, and this is his desk. And so when you walked in the door, right to the right was where this desk was. So again, you're looking into the 1931 wing. What's interesting about this photo is that these lamps actually are aquariums, and there are fish swimming around there. And those lamps still do exist. And I forget who actually has them right now, but it's the descendants of Mr. West. Another shot of the, now I thought this shot was kind of interesting because you just saw the fireplace in the reception area. Well, we don't need a fireplace, but we do need a TV. So they covered up the fireplace and put a TV out front. And now you're looking back into the 1931 section. Another shot of the front. Now, to the left, that door, that is the front door to the building. So when you drive by the building, that's the door you're looking at. So when you walked in, and they had the ceiling fan there. Pretty basic, but again, this is 1961. I believe this is the West, again, standing in front of the 1870 porch. Notice how the porch supports are encased right here in lumber, which we believe was original. What's underneath there, if you come by the hotel now and you look, are beautiful hand-hewn beams that are supporting that porch. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to save those beams and put steel in and re-encase it just like it is here. So it would look the same, but we're going to save those beams because they're really a beautiful piece of work, handwork, that was done to build those. Now this is also the West. This is in the courtyard. And I've got some pictures of the courtyard here a little bit later, but I didn't know there was a courtyard there. Actually, what I thought was there was a bunch of weeds and a whole lot of rubbish. When I came around the corner, and this is between the 1856 kitchen, which was on the back, and the 1931 wing, I mean, literally it was just crammed full. And so 3 days later, after digging, I found a sidewalk down there. I found doors I didn't even know existed. And this is where this shot was actually taken. Now, again, without documentation, we have to rely on the building to tell us things that we can't read about, we don't know about. So one of the things that you can see in this shot is, see this little window right here? Look at the straight line right below it. This window was not original. This was actually a large window, much like this one over here. So we are replacing this window, which still exists today, with the original window that goes there. Now the catch is, the windows that are in that building, or were in that building until this morning, were aluminum. They didn't have aluminum in 1856. At least they didn't have any windows. And so we have to replace every window set in the 1856 section downstairs because in the 1970s they put aluminum windows in there. And you'll be glad to know that the window contractor I'm working with out of Weimar has equipment over 100 years old that made these windows originally. And so So he's remaking the windows, the sashes that were torn up, and the glass we're putting in is 1800s glass that's been repurposed. It was pulled out of a building that was demolished. The glass has already been cut. It should be up here in the next week or two.
Wow.
So again, we're going back to the way this building was intended to be.
Who is that? Who is that?
His name's Chernock, C-W-C-E-R-N-O-C-H.
Yeah.
Chernock. Now, you hear stories. When I bought the building, I heard a lot of different stories. But one of them was about this bell and how when the meals were ready, then Ms. Gracie would ring the bell and everybody in Lampasas would come and eat. And I actually found a newspaper article where she's saying she could feed 500 meals a day out of this kitchen. So I see this picture and go, okay, well, the bell was out in the courtyard in front of the 1870. But see, actually, that's not true. And I'll show you in just a minute why. But anyway, in this picture, that is the bell that's out there. This bell we still have. This bell was cast in 1860 and a famous bell maker outside of Albany, New York. And this is the original bell that Ms. Gracie rang. Another shot of the back. Now, one of the stories, and most of you probably heard about my Facebook page on the hotel, and part of that was to kind of bring you along in the process of what's going on so you know what we're doing, but also kind of invite you to share your stories. And one of the stories I got dealt with room 220 upstairs in the 1856 part where George Winterstein used to live, and apparently he had a special attraction of law enforcement officers. And so this was his escape route, was down this trellis route here. And there were some other stories too. A couple of GIs used to live down this room over here. And one day Mr. Winterstein's next door neighbor was kind of filling me in on this. He said that he had like a Tahoe or something. He had a bigger vehicle, and these two GIs were driving this 1961 Corvette. And they came up to him and said, look, have you got a buddy that sells beer? I said, well, yeah, we do. He said, well, our 61 Corvette, we can't get enough beer in it. And can we borrow your car? And he goes, well, sure. After all, he gets to now drive around a 1961 Corvette. They found his car 3 days later. It was in North Carolina, and the Corvette was hot. You'll notice here the aluminum windows, again down here. Not original, and if you go by today, you'll notice every one of those window sets are out as we're waiting for the new windows to arrive. Got another shot from, I guess this looks like early 70s here. One of the things you'll notice is this porch back here, kind of peeking around the corner right there. That porch isn't there anymore. That's because in the 1970s, when the savings and loan took over, they decided to air condition the building, but we'll just cover in that porch. And we'll cover in the porch on the other side too. Now, another thing you might notice is, you remember the first picture? There were four chimneys right there. There are no chimneys there now. All right, we'll come back and address that a little bit later. Of course, you don't have TV antennas anymore. And by the way, this was before the porch got taken out. You'll notice, though, they've got this single post in there, and that obviously is not attractive. They didn't bother to rebuild the wood posts, I guess, when they rotted or whatever. But again, these are things that we're learning, though, by looking at the building. Another shot, a little better shot of the porch there on the back. We are rebuilding that porch. It will look just like this, which matches the porch on the 1870 wing. Another shot of the 1856 section. Again, you can see the aluminum windows in the bottom. Also notice the chimney right there. So in 1929, when they put the boiler in, they had to put a chimney for the boiler. The chimney's not there anymore. That's 1929. We're not building it to 1929. We're rebuilding it back to the late 1800s. So the chimney's been removed. Of course, the boiler was already removed. And I think the next, well, I'll show you a picture without. Okay, so this is savings and loan. Some of you will probably put your money in there. Remember a shot like this when you walked in. So again, there's the fireplace from the lobby, and there was this counter on this side, and then you could walk around the corner over there. Again, another shot. That view does not look like that remotely today. Where these cars are parked is all trees and plants and stuff that are there. You can, if you look carefully, you can find a little bit of asphalt underneath there. We just actually took down 2 hackberry trees that were covering the walls so we couldn't see our sign. The sign did get repainted at some point, and the man that repainted it came by and stopped by the hotel, and we had a nice chat, but I'm not sure exactly when it was that it was repainted. Again, another shot from, now you see here where they blasted in the porch. So this is kind of my view when I saw it, but you can see the porch hiding behind there. And again, the reason they did this was it made it easy to air condition the building. Well, that's great, except you architecturally altered the building significantly where it doesn't look like what it should look like, which is a iconic Texas porch. This, to me, actually is one of the more amazing shots because this is what was the dining room that fed 500 people. Fluorescent lighting, there are the aluminum windows there in the back. When you see the pictures I'm going to show you here in a minute of what this place looked like, there's no correlation between what you have just seen and what it looked like when I got the building. Again, another shot of the reception area. This is what I saw.
Yeah. Wow.
And this is just part of what I saw. The building, and of course this looks pretty black and white, but the building, if you remember, was pretty black. And you can't just use a power washer to go in and wash this off. And the reason is because you'll not only etch this beautiful Texas stone, but you'll peel out all of the mortar that goes between the stones. And so I hired some guys out of Austin that did a chemical wash on it. Very soft pressure, but it's rather toxic, and it will bleach your clothes really well. But they, I think I have I'll show you a picture here in a minute. Okay, this is the dining room. This is a picture I showed you a minute ago that had fluorescent lighting in it. This is what it looked like when I walked in. Notice the support mechanism for the floor up above. 2 toilets. This, and this was the first view I saw walking into this building for the first time. This is the reception area. To the right is the fireplace that you don't see, but there's the fireplace. Now, the last commercial iteration of this building was as a bank. And so the savings and loan desks that were right here that I just showed you became teller desks, a big teller counter that moved that way. Now, one of the things, too, is that every time somebody did something to the building, they thought the downstairs over here needed to be reconfigured. And so what's interesting is that the floor joists in here look worse than the City of Austin street map. And if you've been to Austin, you know what I'm talking about, because when you go left, you go right, you can notice down here some really nice work where it's like, well, we have a board, it's not quite long enough, let's just put a few more on there. And but the walls were different. Anyway, it was a mess. That counter, by the way, was built in place, and it took literally 3 days to get it out of there. Crazy how much lumber was put into that counter. So that's another shot of it. Again, you can see here in the back, this whole back area was totally bombed out. So that helped us make a decision I'll show you about in a minute. This is the porch, the 1931 downstairs porch. Looks pretty tragic, but you can also see these windows on this left-hand side. That's all 1970s. That's coming off, because just to the left of that is this beautiful courtyard that took 3 days to clean out. And there's a magnolia tree, big magnolia tree that was back there, was cut down, but it refused to die, and so it's coming back. Also in here, after I got all this cleaned out, one of the things that just, there was stickers, all kinds of stuff. And I came back about 4 weeks ago, and there was a rose bush in there. And that rose bush had 30 blooms on it. And not only that, but it had a whole second round that was coming up that then bloomed a week after that. If there was ever a survivor rose, that was it. This was the upstairs above the dining room. The room originally was built as just one open room. At some point, when they were trying to get as many hotel rooms as possible, they made this into 6 rooms. And this is going to become the master suite, my room. And it's not going to look like that. It ultimately will be actually 3 separate sections to it. And I think I've got another picture a little bit later that will kind of show you that. talking about the building, explaining things to you, on the back, this looks like it's a window, or maybe two windows, but when you look at it from the outside, it doesn't look like that at all. It has straight lines down on either side of it. So we go to the 1885 map, and we look at it and say, well, yeah, there actually was a door there, but there was no porch there. Well, why would you have a door and no porch? Well, when you read farther in some of the other documentation, you find out that the room on the front of this, which faces 2nd Street, was actually Ms. Gracie's entertainment room. And I have a pretty good description of that. It had a grand piano up there, it had a sofa, had some chairs and everything, and that's where she entertained guests that came to visit. Well, take that and go to pretty much any barn you see in Texas, and you're going to find the hay is stored on the 2nd floor. So how do you get a grand piano on the 2nd floor when all you have is a stone staircase? You bring it through the back window. And so that was how you got the furniture into the 2nd floor of the building. Go to New Orleans, go to Boston, go to these places, and that's how they did it. And they'd put a block and tackle up in the eave and bring it up that way. So if you go by the building today, you'll notice that's not a window now. That's going to be a door. And when we chipped all that out of there, it's beautiful, perfect straight line, and you can see how they actually put the framing in there. We haven't put the frame in yet, but you can actually see how it was done originally.
A functional door?
It will be, initially it will not be functional, but it can be functional. It's built to make it functional. I don't plan to put a porch back there because, again, that would alter the original intent. One other thing I'll mention there is there was also, you can't see it here, but there's also windows down the side here, but one of those windows was a door. And you say, well, wait a minute, a door to where? Because there's no porch out there. The catch was there was a porch out there. And if you look at the 1885 Sanborn map, you'll notice when you came up the stone staircase, you could either go left down the 1870 wing, or you could go straight down the side of the 1856 wing. So you go by the building today, that's already been opened up, and the doors are being made that will fit in there. Not in this first round, but we will add the porch back. The porch was taken out in 1929. It was taken out when they put the bathroom in, because you couldn't have that was where they wanted the bathroom.
Is your building going to have bathrooms?
That's what he's using the door for.
My daughter informed me we will have bathrooms in the hotel. And I'll show you in a minute where we had to compromise on something. But this was the bathroom, by the way. This is a 1929 bathroom. Lovely. If you like skylights too, have a little special skylight here, a little special skylight there. Talked to the roofing people yesterday, and they agreed with me that there should not be a skylight there. We will be rebuilding this to be a full bath, shower, and all the nice things. This is room 220, and this is the room that George Winterstein lived in. This actually was Ms. Gracie's entertainment room. But they partitioned it off and made 2 rooms out of it. And if you think that looks dingy, just come over any night and I'll show you it looks just like that. Actually, it looked like that until this afternoon, because our stucco guy has come in and is completely redoing all those walls in there today. So it'll be really nice. We're going to redo the room back to Victorian era with the furniture. Probably not going to put the grand piano up there, although we did get a grand piano, but probably will end up with 2 because I do play the piano. But the piano we got is going to go downstairs in the bar or dining room area. This just kind of gives you a flavor. In the next few shots here, give you a flavor of the damage this building inflicted in the last 30 years, primarily by vandals. Although vegetation came out on the porches. When I got the building, the 1870 wing, that porch was covered with vines. I mean, we literally had to go in and cut all that stuff out before we could even move through it. So. But this is flow glass. This is 1800s flow glass that somebody seemed to think it was okay to just go in and tear it up. And that's an easy one because you can replace the glass. There's, by the way, that aluminum window that's coming out. And what they did is they made the aluminum window to fit inside the original wood frame. That's the original wood frame right there. This is a spacer so they could put the aluminum window inside of it. So again, all that's being replaced back with original wood windows.
How thick do you think the original walls were? Were they like 12 inches or something?
16.
15?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I measured it this morning. But now, 15 and 16 kind of depending on. And that's actually one of the really interesting things about the building. If you stand on the corner and you look right straight down the front, it is perfectly straight. I don't know how in the 1850s you could make a wall that is that straight using stone that is all different shapes and sizes. Pretty amazing stuff. Here's a sash. We got to completely replace the sash. I've learned more about windows than I really cared to know. But one of the things is these are called muttons. I called it a mutton, but that's apparently what you put your kid on the ride at a rodeo. But this is called a mutton, and these are original windows because they're really narrow. And so the windows constructed different ways, and that tells us different periods. So we know when sashes were original, we know when sashes were a later model. My guru out of Weimar, I spent an entire day looking at windows, and I'm glad he's doing them. Again, another sash that's broken out. Another sash, I mean, again, this is all vandalism. There are 86 windows in the building. The first bid I got to replace the windows was $84,000. And that was the guy from Weimar, because the modern company that wanted to do these windows, it was $6,000 per window. So vandalism can create the single largest expense in this project. This is the upstairs of 1931. Again, you see, they enclosed the porch, they took these windows and put windows here. They made it nice to air condition, although they actually never went up there. They used it for storage. But here, where the original posts were that supported that. Remember the picture I showed you, the old picture? All right, all this is coming off, and we're going back with the original posts up on top. So that porch will replicate the porch on the other side like it was originally.
So you're working with the Historical Commission?
They're actually working with me. You can turn the camera off now. Now, I met with two 20-year-olds last week, or 2 weeks ago. It's interesting talking about history, to two 20-year-olds, but they actually had done a fair amount of research, and I had done more. And so one of the things we talked about, I'd already bought the building, I'm working on it. We had posted the Facebook page, and you guys were commenting, and everything was going great. And I get this letter from the Historical Commission. Go, whoa, wait a minute! You can't. We got a historical mark on this building here. You can't be messing with the exterior. And I said, well, I haven't messed with the exterior. And yeah, no, I got to let you know 60 days in advance before I make any major changes. Yeah, I got that. And if you guys want to sit down and talk, I'd be glad to talk. And so I said, by the way, didn't that go on in 1965? Yeah, it did. Now, in 1970, y'all authorized aluminum windows to go in and to close off two iconic porches. Is that right? If you think that's okay, you're going to love what I'm doing. So this is step one when I bought it. This is a time exposure over 8 hours, and these are the gentlemen that cleaned the building.
I left my house that morning, I came back, it was a whole new building.
So they did 2 passes of it. All right, now, let me stop it here just a second. So, between the 1856 and 1870, we knew since it was built at 2 different times, when I got into the staircase the first time, this is what it looked like. It was this green and boarded up on both sides, except we knew that was an exterior wall. So if that was an exterior wall, you never put mortar on an exterior wall, so we decided to take it down. Now, the Historical Commission, we didn't call them on this, and the reason is because in 1885, that was an exterior wall, but see, now it's interior, so I don't need your permission because it's an interior wall right now. So this will run for just a second here, but this, you can see how we're prying this off. And I don't know if you can see it, but here are the trowel marks that indicate this is an exterior wall, where they decorated the mortar lines and between the stones. What was interesting is how easy this actually came down.
Wow, look at
So what do you have to do to that wall next? Once you get all that down?
I'm going to wash it.
Wash it?
Yeah,
and then
it's
what?
it's
good to go?
It's good to go. This is the fun part. All right, very therapeutic, I might add. By the way, that wall that you were looking at that had the windows in it, that wall's not there anymore. It was there this morning, but it's gone this afternoon. And let me back up here a second. Oops. And so here, this is a picture I took this morning where they're taking that wall out. You know, some of us learn, and some of us don't. And you look at that perfectly straight line right there. Wow. And if you remember, and go back to the original shots that I had of the building, you'll notice that stonework is completely different. You see that? You got wide stones there, you got wide stones there, and you got this junk in the middle. That's 1929. So it doesn't belong in the early 1900s or late 1800s. So we're taking the wall down, we're putting a big iron gate there at the bottom, and so you'll actually be able to look in and see the original stone staircases there. And you'll also be able to see this.
Oh, wow.
So at the top of the 1870 wall that was hidden by a ceiling that was put in 1929, and only visible once that ceiling was torn out, was the stone star, and that's got graffiti on it, but which we'll clean off. Stone star, the word hotel below that, and 1870 below that. And that was an exterior wall.
Going back to that last shot.
Yes, ma'am.
On the breach between the two buildings.
Yes, ma'am.
What about the roof that is at the very top?
Right. Originally, that roof didn't go across that part. It was two separate roofs, and you can actually see that from inside. Right now, unfortunately, since this is not a public project, and my finances are not what public projects have, we're going to do the roof probably 2 or 3 years from now. But I'll show you why, because it's not just replacing the roof. There are some really key things that are going to be involved in doing that. So the roof's going to remain there for now, but we'll put a light on those stones, so from the street you'll actually be able to see that up there. But that green, ugly mortar wall went up to the ceiling, but above the ceiling it was the bare stone.
Wow.
So when we peel that off, we now have a consistent wall. It comes down, you can see all the mortar lines through there, so you knew that was an exterior wall. We also had the 1885 Sanborn maps that showed this was an open staircase that went through there.
So when you talk about having your bedroom, Miss Gracie's, which part?
So this was Ms. Gracie's entertainment room right here.
And that's going to be your bedroom?
No, my bedroom's behind that.
Oh, behind it.
Yep.
Will you have to repoint any of your stonework, or was it in pretty good shape, all things?
The exterior stonework's beautiful. The stonework in the rooms, I'll show you in a minute. We repointed every room downstairs. We repointed this wall. I don't have a picture of it yet, but this wall right here, facing into this room right here, that was all mortared up. We knew, of course, that was exterior wall. Stripped all that off, and Juan and his guys have repointed that, and it's beautiful. And I do have to brag on, I know some of you guys have kids, and Juan Vidal is our stone guy. His family done stonework, but he's also apparently the soccer coach. So your kids may know Juan from that. This is that courtyard that I didn't know existed. This is after, again, 3 pretty solid days of cleaning it out. You can see here where they cut this magnolia tree. This thing was magnificent at some point. And this is coming out of that, trying to show new life. And by the way, the rose, which isn't in this picture, is right there. I posted a picture on Facebook. I think you all, if you looked at it, you would have seen that. So let's talk about the 1931 wing. Again, because it was a savings and loan, it was a bank, it was a lawyer's office, it was an insurance office, it was a boarding house, it was a rooming house, it was a hotel, it was a lot of different things. And everybody had a different idea how to configure the space. So it was a wreck. And so I decided to make this into a ballroom. It's going to be a 2-story ballroom. Now, it looks narrow in this shot. When you're actually there, it's a whole lot wider. And we purchased chandeliers from the grandson of a former governor of Texas. We'll go down the center of this room. And I'm standing on what will be a balcony that will look into the ballroom, and there will be a balcony down the left side that will be suspended that will also look into the ballroom too. So, and I say a ballroom, I mean it could be used as a meeting space or whatever, but because this was so hacked up, it just made, to me, it made sense because I didn't need 7 more rooms, to make something that could be used by, by citizens of Lampasas, or if I had a party or whatever. So.
What were the original floors? Were they wood?
Yes.
All over the...
Right, 2¼ inch, and you'll be glad to know that the ballroom is going to have 2¼ inch wood that we purchased from a 100-plus-year-old building out of Dallas. It's being repurposed. It'll all be sanded and varnished, and should be really, really attractive. One other thing I might point out, I don't know how many of y'all know about the well. That's the well right there. I've got some more pictures here in a second, but that's where the well is located. So picturing this in a ballroom, we're going to do what Santa Cafe did in Santa Fe, New Mexico, is we're going to put plexiglass over the well, and we're going to bottom light it. Now, one thing that we've got that Santa Fe doesn't have is I've got water. So that will be in the middle of the dance floor, and or whatever, you dance over the top of it. This was the cistern that then became the boiler room that now becomes the wine cellar. So when we have a grand opening, assuming I get that done on budget with everything else, everybody can come over and have a glass of wine.
So wasn't it your daughter that said that she wanted to bring friends in August? So how's that working for you?
Well, she's still my daughter. She has more clout on this project than I do, and that's because her boyfriend is a general contractor. So when he set up the timeline, she said, no, it will be August. We are behind in some areas and we are ahead in other areas. And part of that is because of the nature of the project. When you compare this to a normal construction project, the biggest difference is there's very little construction. We're not building rooms, we're not adding wings, we literally are putting in 2 walls in the master bedroom and putting in flooring. I mean, that's the major construction part of, our new construction part. The flooring guy is literally sitting there waiting for those subfloors to go in, which are, the carpenters have already started working, the dining room's ready to have the subfloor dropped in on it. They're going to come in. Different from the way this was done in the 1850s and 1870s is we're coming in with a moisture barrier under the floor joist, so we won't have any problem with the wood rotting. And then, of course, we'll come in with another vapor barrier under the floor itself. So two levels of protection, so this building hopefully will last a whole heck of a lot longer than I do. So we're behind on that side of the project, but at the same time, the other parts of the project are ahead of schedule. So the stonework's ahead of schedule, the stucco's ahead of schedule, so the window guy is pretty much on schedule, and as you can imagine, the logistics of building these windows from scratch, hand building these windows, I mean, so it's anyway, so let me see here if I can get this to actually enlarge. Well, apparently not. So put on your binoculars, and here's the hotel up here. Now you notice this, and by the way, this is 1885. There's a date stamp right there. There's no 1931 wing. But right there it says well. So that's how we knew that's where the well was. Because, see, the well was covered up in 1931. But that's when it was covered up by the building. But the well ceased to have a purpose around 1900, because around 1900, the city got water. And so they didn't need a well anymore. So what that means is that it became a great trash dump.
Yes.
And so they started pouring stuff down in the well.
Yes.
And so some of the things that we found in the well were all the original lightning rods that were on top of the building. And when it was built originally, it had wood shingles. But around 1900, late 1800s, they changed it over to a metal roof. So, well, we don't need the lightning rods anymore. They just throw them down. And so I pulled those out. At first, I didn't know what they were, and somebody on Facebook said, oh, those are old lightning rods. So I set them over on the side, didn't think a lot about it, went on eBay, and I could buy 2 brand new ones, well, 2 brand new refurbished ones, $3,100. I think we'll take care of them. Here is that open staircase we were talking about. Here is the porch in front of the 1870. Here's the porch down to 1856. Also interesting, if you've been over to the museum building isn't there yet. But this building is, which is on the back of the museum. And this served originally as downstairs was stables, upstairs is where the employees of the hotel lived. So this was originally part of the hotel. It's now part of the museum, which is great because they take really fabulous care of it. Okay. So that's my daughter. And so when I showed her the well originally, she goes, well, let's clean it out. And it's like, yeah, like, and who's going to do that? For 3 weeks in a row, she came up, and here she's about, 4 feet down. And I said, well, okay, go for it. Hopefully you'll strike oil first, but I'll settle for water. One thing you might notice about this well, I mean, a lot of people think of wells as being brick-lined, this being stone-lined. Look at the curvature that was carved into the stone that's there. By the way, these stones also are about that wide. So I know a lot of people were concerned to her being down in the well and it's going to have a collapse on her. And although we did finally put a tether on her, which putting a tether on her is kind of impossible because she played soccer. But anyway, so she started digging, and that's when she got started, and that's where she hit water. Now, that's 20 feet down. Now, the fun thing about Facebook is that there are some of you all that like to comment like at 1 o'clock in the morning. And it's interesting because some of those comments kind of appear pretty much out of left field. But this was one of those that kind of appeared out of left field because I had actually gone to the Water Development Board maps for every well in this area, and there was nothing anywhere close to 20 feet. And so, and here comes this comment at 1 o'clock in the morning, goes, you're going to hit sand at 19, you're going to hit water at 20. Who are you? And sure enough, at 19, she goes, Dad, it's getting soft. That's 20. This is the last time she was in the well. This is when she hit water, and she's now finishing coming out. Now, notice the ladder is about 4 feet below the edge of the well. It was above the well when I put it in there when she went down. She would go down for 3 hours at a time. We'd have to pull the ladder out because it's tight, and about every 30 seconds we'd bucket. Now, that weekend was a pretty amazing weekend because hitting water was the first thing. So the second thing was we're up on the second floor, and there were 3 different ceilings in the rooms on the second floor. And so we obviously didn't have 3 different style ceilings back then. So the question was, well, what's the original ceiling? And so we went over to the little hotel, which was built with a surplus stone from the 1870 wing. And we found that the ceiling upstairs there matched the ceiling in 3 of the rooms in the upstairs where we were. The 4th one, we really weren't sure about. The 5th one, we knew was wrong. It was ugly on top of that. So I'm pulling it down, and this dust is coming down like crazy. And it's like, well, we better go up in the attic and figure out what's up there. So because the access to the attic was fairly tight, I had Debbie climb up to the hole with a flashlight, and she's about halfway in there and goes, you're not going to believe what's up here. There is a room, a fully formed room that goes from one end of the 1870 to the other end of the 1870. It's tongue and groove. It's stained. It's got toe mold in it. It's a finished out room. And the only way you can get there is through this little tiny hole that she stuck her head through. So we climbed up in there, and sure, it's dirty, and the other some boards had fallen down, but what was it? This was the bunkhouse. So if you couldn't afford the 50 cents a night to stay in the hotel, they'd say, well, get your bedroll, you can go upstairs and sleep in the bunkhouse. And so that's what this was. There's graffiti up here. Now the question is, how did you get up here though? You know, back in, you got a bedroll, that's about the only thing you can get through the hole. And so we walked down to this far end down here, and we realized that's where the stair was. But in 1929, they put in bathrooms, and they took out the stairwell. This room has been sealed.
Oh, how cool.
So this was the second big thing. Here's the name of the man who built that wing, Charlie Green. This is graffiti from pre-1929. And again, and we're going to clear coat this so you can come in, you know, when we get the room done. All right, so there are 4 platforms that come off the side of this room. Okay, well, so what are the 4 platforms for? You have a cedar post rafter, you have a modern 2x4. You have really old wood, you have new wood. There were 4 dormer windows on the back of this wing. 4, and there's not one element of documentation that says, or photo or otherwise, that should say there were ever dormer windows on the back. It's as plain as day. And you walk down this room and you see 4 separate dormers, and this is how they got the light into the bunkhouse. So this was closed off at some point. We don't know when. Obviously, it was more modern than a cedar post. But so when we go to the question about changing the roof, we're going to put the chimneys back on. We're going to put the dormers back. The Historical Commission wants to talk to me about it. That's fine. We'll talk, because it's not going to happen this year, but it'll probably happen in the next 2 or 3 years. And this is the second, like I say, of the 3 big things on this one weekend alone. Now, if you look at this aerial photo, here's where the 4 chimneys were. You can see the discoloration. So the chimneys were cut right below the roof, and I actually took my iPhone and stuck it over the top because I couldn't get my head up there. And the flues are open all the way down into each one of those rooms. There's a fireplace in each room over there, and that's where they came up. So back to the bell story. So I'm reading this article from 1907. It says, well, Ms. Gracie would ring the bell. She would ring the bell from the reception room. It's like, well, how could she ring it from the reception if the bell was out in the courtyard? And so climbed up in the attic, different attic. And at the top of the attic hole is this base right here. And that is the base that supported the bell. 4 posts. That's where the rope went through. If you look at the ceiling, or the rafters, there are 4 rectangular cuts where the support post went through the roof, and here's an angle cut, which is above the hole, because that's where the rope went through. So there was a cupola on the Keystone Hotel. There's no documentation there was ever a cupola on the Keystone Hotel. The only documentation we have is that they rang the bell from down below. We've chased that hole, and it's a straight line from there all the way down, through holes, all the way into the reception area. And you can see today, looking up the other way, you can see the hole where the rope came through, and Ms. Gracie rang the bell. Again, the Historical Commission wants to talk about the cupola that's going to go on the roof, and so again, this will be a couple or 3 years from now, but we will put the bell back on the roof. And again, we have the original bell. And there it is, with the 1860 stamp on it. So there's the chimney, no chimney. And this is the door that came out on the porch, and you say, well, I don't see a porch there. But actually, I don't know if you can see in this picture, along the side of this wall, there are cutouts where the supports for that porch came out, cantilevered off of there and supported the porch that's there. So the door goes back here, transom above that, and then, of course, the rest were windows. And that's on the east side of the 1856. That's where the grand piano went through. And again, that was a window when I got the building. Here's another thing too. That was not a door, that was a window. You see how they dropped it down? But that's the original lintel. It's lined up with this window over here. We're leaving this as a door because there wasn't a rear access to the building there. You actually came through the kitchen. But this is, again, it's where the building's talking to you, and because there's no documentation about a door or a window. So this is after Efren has gone through and restuccoed the room. If you remember the picture before, it showed how everything was peeling off on there. And this is honestly one of the things I absolutely love about Lampasas. When I met with Juan on a Thursday and said, well, Juan, I've got this project, and I showed it to him. I said, when can you start? And he says, how about Monday? Okay. I said, do you know a stucco guy? Yeah, I know a stucco guy. Well, you want to get him over here? Yeah, sure, he comes over. So on Monday, Juan shows up with 5 people, Efren shows up with 6, and they tore into that 1870 wing like you can't believe. And that room that was peeling off, now this hadn't been painted yet, but beautiful stucco work though. You can see the mantles, each one of the fireplaces had mantles. One of the Facebook posts I got was from somebody that said, well, actually, we have one of those mantles. My grandfather used to live there, and when he left, he said, well, you can take the mantle. Can I have it back? No. These are the downstairs rooms. Again, you asked about the tuck pointing. Just beautiful work here that Juan and his guys did. And of course, we will be repainting this, but it gives you, you start to feel, we're coming back now. We're starting to feel it again. We're actually having cabinets that are made, they're going to fit in this area right here between the fireplace and the wall. That's where we're bringing in the HVAC, the electric, the internet, everything else. So when you walk in the room, you won't see a single thing that's modern in the room because it's all going to be hidden in a varnished cabinet. They'll be there. There's your downstairs 1870s porch after all the weeds have been taken out of it.
That's beautiful.
And the upstairs porch. So where was the staircase? It was right here. And went from here up into to the attic room. And this was the bathroom that was put in 1929 to seal off that room. This is where my daughter and I had a compromise. She goes, no, Dad, there will be a toilet. Okay. So the toilet's going here, and the staircase is going behind it, and so I get my staircase, and she gets her toilet. So, by the way, I had a meeting with a wonderful interview with Dorothy yesterday. I don't know if you all saw it. She's 100 years old, and what a sweet, charming woman. And she was recollecting her honeymoon night, which was actually over in the 1931 wing. She didn't remember a whole lot other than that the bed was iron and the mattress was really comfy. And I didn't say this, but her daughter asked her what the ceiling looked like. And it was her mother, I think, that was a product of that. But anyway, so they can get away with that. So anyway, that's. But she said that the bathrooms in 1931 had a big bathtub, but if you needed to use the toilet, you had to go down and use the central toilet, which was the one that I showed you. It looked really bad in the first shot. So that was the bathroom that she used because there were no toilets in the rooms in the 1931 sign. Huh. This was exterior wall, 1856. This is, you're in the 1931 wing. This is where the porch or the balcony is. It looks into the ballroom, and this is before it got tuck pointed. And today it's beautiful. Front doors, 8 different layers of paint on this, representing 8 different colors. It will be stained when I get finished with it. So, but anyway, this just gives you an idea of just how much they would go over and do something and redo something. We had like 3 different layers of wallpaper upstairs with paint. They'd wallpaper it, and then they get tired of that, and then they'd paint it, and then they'd wallpaper it again. So a lot of deconstruction. This, we obviously haven't taken off the glass shed on the back. The pecan tree, we literally thought this pecan tree was dead. When I showed up and I found the rose bush with the roses on it, this pecan tree that literally had not done anything in years had buds on it, and this is it last weekend. I had my tree guys come out, they cleaned it up. We cleaned up the oak tree that was in the back. Beautiful oak tree. By the way, we're working to get the utilities all brought in underground, so you won't have that wire hanging across there. This is one of the chandeliers in the ballroom. This, again, belonged to the grandson of Governor Campbell of Texas. We have 3 that are identical and 2 that are identical. That'll be coming in. They're actually in storage here in Lampasas now. This is a little bar that's going to go in behind the fireplace in the ballroom. That's actually made out of ceiling tin that was repurposed into These are the benches that will be sitting on the porch looking into the courtyard. This is kind of interesting. Any champagne drinkers here? Probably familiar with Moet de Chandon, White Star. Okay, anyway. So my daughter has all kinds of great ways to spend my money. She's the one that found the governor's deal. Anyway, so we're down at Round Top doing a little shopping, and we start seeing these boards everywhere like this, and we look closely, and it says Moet on that. But also, in the corner, it's stamped, and this isn't showing the full picture, but so if you've ever been to Epernay, France, there's 7 miles of caves underneath Epernay that Moet runs, ages their champagne in. And every day they go down there and they turn the bottles a half a turn, helping the fermenting process. And these are the boards those bottles sit in. So these are going to line part of the wine cellar. So we'll have a little bit of France now in our wine cellar. This is the dining room table. The base of that came off of a wood lathe out of Boston, and then they made this inlaid table that's going on top of it, so that'll be in the dining room. These are the barn doors. Again, you're kind of missing the top of it, but that will go in the master bedroom between, when you first walk in, there's kind of a lounge area in there, and these barn doors will open into the master bedroom, and then 2 doors on either side that will go back into the master bath. We thought this would look cool in a bar. It actually was for hauling furniture that they repurposed. So I was looking for a reception area. You got to have a reception desk, and I was looking for kind of a plain Texas reception desk, and ran across this thing. Now, this came out of the King of Belgium's hunting lodge, and the Belgians hired the Swiss to carve into the wood what you could hunt when you're there. And I don't think there's anything more iconic than hunting quail in Texas, except in Lampasas where you hunt deer with a car. So anyway, we purchased this, and this will be, when you walk in the front door, this will be the reception desk on the left-hand side. So let's, I don't know how many of y'all saw this story. So a 30-year-old gentleman, Mr. Pale, walked into my front door a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "I have something for you." I said, "Oh, wonderful, what is that?" And he said, "Well, my grandfather, when I was 8 years old, gave me this key to the Keystone Hotel, and I think you should have it." And I said, well, thank you so much. I mean, I really appreciate that. While you're here, let me show you around. And so we were walking through, and before I got to the hotel, all the doors had been pulled off, and they were all kind of stacked in the back. And we walked back into the dining room area, and the door on top of the stack of doors is door 19.
Wow.
There's door 19, and I put the key in the door, and the lock works. Here's the key. So we have so many things to be thankful for in this project, and whether it's the building talking to us, whether you all are talking to us, whether you're sending us photos, which again I've shown some of those there, whether you're telling us stories, whether it's the one I heard today about knocking off the porch, you know, it's these things that really make this project special. And you know, I'm doing my best to bring it back. Again, we have limits on time, we have limits on budget, but I feel certain it will be really a positive icon for the city going forward. Just kind of an old shot, to give you an idea of the interest in this building. This photo was looked at 70,000 times.
Wow.
And that was the other day. Now, let me digress just a second. See, the reason I came to Lampasas was to find a place to put my Model T Ford. Okay, I collect Model T. And along the way, I think I actually have a picture. There we go. So that's one of them. This is a 1926 Sports Roadster Model T. I had it since I was 14. And anyway, across the street from the Keystone Hotel is the old Ford dealership. It was Love Ford. Actually, it was Mandy's grandfather. Today, if you go by Swain's Hardware, this car is sitting in the showroom.
Oh, cool.
We brought this up. We brought this up 2 days ago, and of course we wanted to surprise you all. So when you come to the hotel, y'all can go over to the Ford dealership, go over to Swain's, and see the Model T. There's one other quick thing I want to show in this photo, and then I'll be glad to ask any questions. Of course, y'all are welcome to go when you're tired of hearing me talk. And I couldn't show it to you on the Sanborn map because it was too small, but every other window in here, there were narrow windows and there were wide windows. And so I'm working with my guy out of Weimar, and we're going through and looking at these windows, and we're trying to figure out, well, this is an early window, this is a late window, this is late, this is early. And we realized that the wide windows were all doors. Every one of the 5 rooms downstairs was a door. There's no documentation there were ever doors that were there. More interesting than that, on the Sanborn, every one of these rooms had a different street address. So we're going to leave them as windows because that's the way everybody knows it, and then there's no documentation otherwise. But next time you drive by the building, let the building speak to you. Look at it, and you'll be able to see that these were originally exterior doors. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you coming and your support for the project. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
I've got one.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you going to put all the fireplaces back in?
The fireplaces are all in place now. There's actually one room that does not have a fireplace and also has a different ceiling, and we're still trying to figure out what that room was. The fireplaces will not be active, though, first of all, because the chimneys don't go through the roof, but secondly, I really don't want fire in the building at this point. Any other questions?
I tell you, I was a former archaeologist, and I look at that and I'm like,